Hi, folks. You ever notice how Democrats sound like they're auditioning for a word salad competition, only without the dressing or any logic whatsoever? It's like every time they speak, the teleprompter just gives up halfway through. Case in point, Gavin Newsom, who got asked if copying President Trump is normalizing the behavior and immediately started malfunctioning like ChatGPT running on decaf. Then there's obviously Ayanna Pressley, the worst representative in the history of Congress, claiming Trump's cruel enough to put work requirements on food stamps. Yeah, the horror of asking people to have jobs in exchange for welfare benefits.
First and foremost, this is the most corrupt administration in history.
What?
And then they're cruel enough to create work requirements for hungry people to get SNAP.
If you ever wondered where the bottom of the Democrat barrel is, we've arrived, folks. This is them going full mask off, full-blown communism. It's no longer UBI. They're not even hiding behind euphemisms anymore to describe how they want everybody dependent on the state. That's ultimately what this is. They want you to be dependent on the state without having to work for it. And that means at some point you're going to give up all of your liberty so the state can own you and tell you what to do in exchange for whatever they decide you owe, be it work, obedience, or even your life. Because once you rely on the government to feed you, you don't own your freedom anymore. They do. Very much like Islamic theocracies, they can choose whatever the hell they want to do with you. Just look at China. You want a social credit score? Well, keep walking down this path, and that's exactly where this ends. There's no version of this that actually ends well. When the state is literally making a case for you to stay home so it can pay you, what do you think it's going to ask in return? You think it's going to be anything good? Has it ever historically been anything good? You think Lex Luthor over here has your best interest at heart? Because at the end of the day, that's who's running the show. Villains who smile while they chain you to dependence. And behind this whole communist level of retardation is a very calculated misunderstanding of the Constitution. And nobody embodies this better than leftist commentator on a MSDNC, Elie Mystal.
Most of our Constitution, even the amendments, have been written and ratified exclusively by white, rich, land-holding men, right?
Good.
There's not a single state that had a majority legislature of women that has ratified a single amendment in the current Constitution,
Who
right?
cares?
So starting from the beginning and pulling that thread all the way through now, this is a white man's document, and it looks like it. So when you ask, like, is the Constitution working as intended? Pretty much. And the intention was to crush the rights and democratic participation of everybody who was not a rich white person, right?
First off, I pray this man someday manages to make a point without sounding objectively retarded. Next, who cares who wrote the Constitution as long as it works? Do you sit in your BMW thinking, oh no, German Nazis invented this car, I cannot drive it anymore? Do you ever sip your Fanta thinking, wow, this brand once made sodas for Nazis, gotta stop supporting Coca-Cola? Do you use your computer with IBM chips and think, these were the same people who built tech used during the Holocaust? Of course not. You use it because it functions. The same logic applies here. Yes, we should understand history and recognize its moral complexities, but Marxism in this modern grievance-obsessed form takes legitimate critique and weaponizes it as a tool to tear down the entire system. The goal isn't actually reform. It's just resentment. The Constitution works. It's the most successful governing document in world history, still standing, still protecting liberty while other nations rewrite theirs every few years. You look at countries like France, Argentina, Brazil, Ethiopia, Haiti. Each has rewritten constitutions repeatedly, often following coups or collapse. America has endured because it was built on timeless principles, not temporary passions. And yes, the founders were white men because at that point, they were the landowners with stakes in the new nation. That wasn't about race. It was about ensuring that those shaping policy had something invested in its outcome. Over time, the system expanded, reformed, and included more people, yet it still functioned as designed. By the way, America isn't a democracy. It's a constitutional republic. And that distinction matters because our freedoms are not subject to mob rule. The irony is that the very document Elie Mystal trashes is the one that gives him the right to trash it. Meanwhile, the same ideology that fuels his rant now invites people into the system who contribute absolutely nothing, demanding benefits and even voting rights without any investment in the country itself. That's the opposite of what America was built on. The founders built a nation of participants, people who had to earn their place in the republic by contributing to it. That was the entire point of the original land ownership requirement. It wasn't about race, as modern revisionists like to claim. It was about investment. The idea was simple. If you want to vote, if you want to have a voice, you needed to have literal skin in the game. And that system worked because it shaped behavior. It encouraged migrants to come here, work hard, save money, and buy land. That process transformed them from outsiders into actual stakeholders in the country. It tied freedom to responsibility, rights to effort. When people came to America under that model, they didn't come looking for a handout. They came to actually build. That's what fueled our rise from 13 colonies to the most powerful, innovative nation on earth. Now, by contrast, today's left has flipped that model completely on its head. They're building a nation of dependents, not participants. Instead of incentivizing people to work, to invest, to integrate into the American story, they're telling people that entitlement equals citizenship. You don't have to earn, you just have to exist. And now in states like mine, in California, we're seeing policies that blur the line between residency and participation. Illegal migrants being offered public benefits, local voting rights, and access to taxpayer-funded programs with zero expectation of contribution. That's the death of civic responsibility. A nation can't survive when half its people are told they deserve everything from a system they put nothing into. What the Democrats call compassion is really a slow erasure of the very ethic that built this country. An ethic that said freedom is not given, it's earned. And once you detach freedom from responsibility, the people stop being citizens and become clients of the state. And that's not progress, folks. That's regression into feudalism under new branding of Marxism or democratic socialism. And since we're on the topic of retards, might as well visit Gavin Newsom and see what he's saying now.
Nothing I dislike more than the politician that sits there and lies to you. And we all just sit there rolling our eyes going, give me a break.
Do you legitimately believe that he was capable of serving as president until January of 2029?
Yeah, I think my focus was frankly situational. It was making sure Donald Trump didn't get back into office to experience everything that we're experiencing today.
Makes
and there
sense.
was no interaction I had that suggested otherwise.
What do you say to Americans who feel misled by you and other top
I misled in what
Democrats
respect? He decided to step
about the
down.
mental acuity of President Biden, that they wish you'd sounded the alarm
People are
sooner to
disgusting.
give way for
I never
an
experienced,
open convention?
I'm not going to substitute myself for someone else or for popular opinion. I'm going to express my relationship to my truth with the former president of the United States, including at the end of his term, quite literally, in December, which was a masterclass of foreign policy and domestic policy, which I will never forget as we walk through not just the election, but we're walking through the world we're living in. There was nothing to suggest what you just said or others have suggested in terms of my interaction. That's all I can be accountable for.
What a disgusting little dirtbag. It's actually unbelievable. Like, what is wrong with Gavin Newsom? Does he actually hear himself? I don't know how anybody can watch this man and not straight up see through the lies and manipulation. This guy is genuinely awful. He sits there pretending to hate politicians who lie to your face while doing exactly that, lying to your face. He tells Kristen Welker with a straight face that Joe Biden had no issues with mental acuity, then hides behind the most absurd phrase ever uttered by a public official, my relationship to my truth. That's not honesty. That's narcissism dressed as integrity. This is the modern Democrat Party in a nutshell, folks. Truth is no longer objective. It's just personal branding. It's whatever serves the narrative at the moment. Newsom isn't speaking truth to power. He's speaking marketing to voters. And that's why he's dangerous. He represents the perfect evolution of the political sociopath, a man who can look into the camera, deny reality, and still sound righteous doing it. Because in his world, and in the broader Democrat worldview, lying isn't wrong if it protects the cause. That's a sickness of post-truth politics, and Newsom is a poster boy.
You have been one of the most outspoken Democratic voices against President Trump. And part of your tactic is to imitate some of what we see online from President Trump. So you mimic his all-cap posts, you send out similar memes.
God, dude.
Do you run the risk of normalizing that behavior?
Quite the contrary. The whole expression was to not allow it to be normalized. It was becoming normalized. All this, the normalization of deviancy, across the spectrum of issues. But
What?
his communication, he's dressing up as the Pope, as Superman. Hold on. He's
You're
putting his
triggered by
face
him
on
dressing
Mount
up as
Rushmore.
Superman?
He's saying, thank you. It's madness. And so I put
yeah.
a mirror up
You're
to
mad.
that madness.
You have been one of the most
Oh, yeah. Newsom is mad, folks. You can absolutely hear it in his tone. The man's gears are grinding because Trump lives rent-free in his head. You can practically see the frustration bleeding through his fake smile. And normalizing Trump? Are you kidding me? Trump represents a massive portion of the country, tens of millions of Americans who are tired of being lectured by elites like Newsom, who've never had to live under their own policies. Trump didn't normalize anything. He exposed how fake and fragile the American political class, the Democrat political class, really is. This is what happens when someone from the ruling club loses control of the narrative, like Newsom. They start babbling nonsense about deviancy across the spectrum, mirroring madness, which is Gavin's pretentious way of saying, I don't know how to deal with people who don't worship me. This meltdown isn't just about Trump, folks. It's about the Democrats' complete loss of cultural dominance. They can't meme, they can't joke, and they can't handle being mocked by the very people they spent decades condescending to. Newsom's word salad isn't just incoherence. It's the sound of a regime that's forgotten how regular people talk. And more importantly, how people think. Don't ever be fooled by people like Gavin Newsom, folks. Men born with a silver spoon who've never once had to earn the meal it fed them. Unlike Trump, who built and lost and built again in the real world before stepping into politics, Gavin has spent his entire adult life feeding off government power and elite connections. He was raised by the Getty family, funded by their fortune, and groomed within California's ruling class. He's Nancy Pelosi's nephew, a dynasty politician who's never worked a real job or risked anything in his life. His first business bankrolled by one of the richest families on earth, the Gettys. So when he talks about the people, understand he's never actually been one of them. He's not self-made, he's state-made. The same goes for many of this new aristocracy of Democrat politics, people who've turned public service into generational privilege while pretending to fight for the working class they've never met. Just look at Mamdani, for example. Exact same thing. So ask yourself, why do we keep letting these polished actors lecture us about truth and integrity when they've never lived under the consequences of their own decisions? And more importantly, how long before America wakes up to the fact that the ruling class doesn't represent them anymore? They just manage us. You tell me what you think in the comments down below. Hope you have a terrific day. Peace.